crazy. It just seems like it's crazy.
Did you find anything out about, was it science?
I'd like to go ahead and call this.
No, it's.
Thank you for your patience while we're trying to work out some glitches. Please lead us in the pledge, Mr. Topol.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You should have all received the minutes of the July 12th meeting. Are there any additional corrections or comments on those? Do I have a motion?
Second.
Thank you. First McCabe, second by Woodward. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Take care of that. Do we have any public comment today? I don't see anybody signed up for the list. Is there anybody in the audience who wants to make public comment? Going once, going twice. Bryce? All right, we'll move on. Planning. Northwest Indiana 2050 Plus Plan, Phase 1, status update. The overview of finding meaning phase of the overview of finding meaning phase of the Northwest Indiana 2050 Plus Plan public outreach process.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry about that. It's been a while since I've had an in-person meeting. Didn't realize. So, my name is Mitch Barloga, Active Transportation Manager here at NERC, and I'm kind of doing the first of about, I think, three-legged presentation here with Kevin and Peter dealing with the 2050 plan. This is our regional transportation plan update, and you know it's had many names over the years, and we have iterations every decade to our plan. I started here, I think I was under 2020, and now we're into 2050. On the wall over there, clock wall, you'll see the kind of that matrix of the goals that we had laid out in our 2050 plan. So this being the 2050 plus plan, an update to that plan that we are required to do every few years by the federal government. And this year we are kind of breaking it down into a unique process. It's up on the screen here, and it's three major components that we are looking to do regarding the plan development. The first one being called finding meaning, then we have creating purpose, and then purpose-driven planning. Each of these represents a different phase of how we are looking to produce the plan. We are in the waning days of our finding meeting, which is really our public engagement and feedback process of the planning development process. And we have had many opportunities over the last few months working with the public and distributing a number of materials to them regarding the update to the plan. Most prominently, a survey that we have online, and out front we have brochures that we encourage you to take. I don't know if there's anyone, did anyone take one of the brochures? I hope you did. It was all, oh, thank you. There you go. Look at that. Team players. I love it, George. There you go. So George has one, and thank you, Deb. And on the back of that brochure, it goes into a number of matters that we're covering with the planning and kind of the plan in general. Those who are familiar with our work here at NERC should be more than familiar with what we go through every few years here. But it's also written so the general public understands what we're trying to accomplish here with the planning document. On the very back, though, is a QR code as well as a link to our website to take a survey, as well as to work with an interactive map to identify areas within the region that would help aid with the improvement of our transportation network region-wide. Of course, that would be on really regarding a number of transportation fronts that we work with here at NERC. Of course, roads and highways, but we also have transit and freight. We have non-motorized active transportation as well. So we want to make sure that all the public is engaged in making sure that we can take a holistic approach to our transportation network here in the region going forward. And as for our public engagement itself, we have been at a number of festivals throughout the region. We were at a Juneteenth celebration in Maryville. We all took turns at each county fair throughout July and August, and none of us had an attack of elephant ear overdose. So I'm happy to report that, although it was very tempting, very tempting. But we had incredible engagement. We probably handed out over 1,000 of the brochures that are out front, and we are receiving pretty strong feedback at this time. There are like 4 different tracks that we are involved with different consulting firms. This is a first for NERC. We put together our 2040 plan over 10 years ago with the help of a consulting firm, but now we have actually broken out this planning process into 4 separate components and 3 different firms. The components include land use, active transportation, which are being taken care of by one consultant, another consultant is handling freight, and another consultant is handling transit in Northwest Indiana. So you have these 4 different tracks of plans that we will be looking to meld together when the final document is looking to be prepared and finalized by May of next year, as the schedule shows you up on the screen. So right now we have had 2 of these documents that have been prepared for us with a draft phase 1 report. And before I actually bring the gentleman up here to talk about those in a bit more detail, I am working with the active transportation component, as well as Iman Ibrahim working with the land use component. RDG from Omaha, Nebraska is the planning firm we are working with at this time on both of these components. And they are in the process of kind of wrapping up the phase 1 reports for both of those components of the plan. We're hoping to have this finding meeting segment done for all 4 phases come the end of October. So we're going to leave that survey on the back of that brochure open until about the end of October. So still ample time for you to please promote this to your social media sites, to your local officials, to your employees that work for you, work with you at your particular municipality or public agency. We of course encourage any agency, private or public, to please take part of the survey and to aid in our planning efforts. So with that said, I will bring up now Peter Kimball, and he will talk a bit more about the freight component of our plan.
Hello everyone, so I am the project manager for the freight component of the 2050 Plus plan. We're working with CPCS. And so far I think we've had a pretty good first phase of this project. They've delivered us the draft working paper. It's very data heavy, it's 128 pages long, so it's a lot of good material to work with. That being said, we're kind of moving on to the next phase where we'll be integrating that public feedback as well. Something that I kind of tried to push was letting the public know how freight affects them. That seems to be the least interesting one to people when they walk by and see the bike trails. You know, they talk about trails, but I'm like, don't forget about those rail crossings and the congestion. So we have a pretty robust list of stakeholders on our steering committee. Thanks to Kay for helping me out with that. So we have people from rail, economic development, we're working with the port, INDOT, and then of course municipalities and county governments. So all of them are kind of in the phase of reviewing this draft document as well. In the next 2 weeks, we'll have our second steering committee meeting to kind of incorporate all that feedback as well as staff feedback. And then we'll kind of start to move on to phase 2, where we talk about where we're going with this plan now that we have an understanding of where we are and where we come from in the region.
Hi everyone, I'm Kevin Fleet. I'm the project manager for the transit portion of the MTPL 2050 plan element. So we're doing the same exact thing that Peter talked about. We just finished up the phase 1 report. It's going through staff, and it'll be going to the steering committee here in the next few weeks. We'll have our next meeting with that for the steering committee later in September. Actually, in this meeting right now, I think we have 5 steering committee members on that, so that's always nice to see. David, George, Beth, Kelly's on that. A lot of the transit operators are part of that. All of the cities and towns that have transit but don't have their own transit agencies, transit themselves are all part of the committee. We're working through the phase 1 report right now. Ours is not nearly as robust as the freight one. Ours is only about 40 pages rather than 100 pages. So they're going through the finding meeting right now, looking at the gaps and needs in the transit systems and how we can improve it. The next step is we're gonna be looking into, the best ways that we can, transfer from Illinois over to Indiana with transit. So that's the next thing we're working on. We're gonna keep going on with that, so, thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. So it gives you a bit of an overview of where we are with the phase one development of the planning process, as I had mentioned before. The two other ones being Active Trans and Land Use are still under development for their phase one, but we're working quite well. We have a series of workshops, at least on the active transportation front, with bicycle retail stores throughout the region to have an open house, bring people in and talk to them directly. We're also trying to engage people again where we can find them. So if you have any ideas, festivals that are happening, maybe even a bingo, we don't care. We just would like to be there where the public is and to help engage them in this planning process. Any questions? Yes, Kay.
Not that I don't need more reading material, but when will the phase one draft be available for folks that might not be sitting on a committee to see?
I can send that to you. I think once we get through the steering committee, I think the plan then is to put up and make it noted that it is a draft on the website.
Right now, it's just going through staff, NERC staff, and it'll be
Yeah.
going to the committees as soon as we finish up going through our part of it.
So within a month, you think they
Yeah.
would be on your website? So I don't need you to send it to me in advance.
Okay.
Yeah, we also have some steering committees, again, I can only speak with Active Trans, and E-Man is not in the room at this moment, but we're looking to finalize that in October, once we have our final, meetings with that, and then by the end of that month, if not early November, those plans or those phases will be up online as well.
A comment, concern in general, communities that perhaps score as environmental justice communities in the region, a lot of work needs to be put into play on how to better reach and talk to those community folks. I mean, you know, the bike shops are great, but the neighborhood people who are in the vicinity of where freight and logistics centers are being held, I think you need to look at ways to improve engaging those communities.
Yes.
I mean, we've all seen some of the responses to some of these new businesses, so we need to step up our game as a region.
No, certainly. We have been active with members of the NAACP in Gary and other entities as well, community groups that we are looking to engage with and speak with, trying to get on the list for festivals and other events that are happening in the city of Gary. So we're very cognizant of that issue, and we're doing our best to spread the love as much as we can, especially in our core communities. Quick, David, has a question.
Just real quick, kind of putting the city of Gary on the spot, but they're in the process of ending or completing the Bike and Ped Plan process, and that outreach and the stakeholder steering committee could be, if it's not already, could be a very good resource in getting to organizations and people with thoughts in Gary and the media around Gary for active transportation and transit, since that was a sort of a intermodal, multimodal look at active transportation and cycling. So, you know, those two committees could use their committee as a great resource for getting the word out. Would you agree?
Exactly, and Thomas is well about this, that we'll be able to, we've got the mailing list that we use, we've got our, CAC, system that gets information out, and we've also then, with regard to the survey, we're having problems getting people to fill out as well, or getting them in their hand. We're gonna pass on our MetroQuest data that had many of the similar questions from bike and peds, perhaps something to go along with, but as you're very right, it's a difficult thing, even within the city of Gary, for us to reach out to all those neighborhoods, in an effective way. It's a real challenge.
So I just want to say, David, that we have talked specifically to our consultant about that planning process in detail, and I know those findings have not been made public,
Yep.
so, but we're trying to work on the draft, findings with our consultant to make sure they're part of that process. Kay, you're going to say something else.
I would like to make a request that NERC give consideration to creating a extensive database of each municipality and what some of their, organizations are that you're speaking to that others can access from, improving relationships within the EJ communities. So it's not a small task.
Well, we're engaging on quite a few fronts, we just gotta put that into one.
Yeah,
as you say,
database that
yeah.
the region can access would be very well received.
Thank you, Jay. It would be. very
And
helpful.
position us well for grants going forward.
Yes, it would. Any other questions on this part of the agenda? All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. And I believe the survey is available online, and Thomas Dow is here too for any other questions you might have related to this.
This was good.
That was informational, and we move on to the next informational topic. U.S. Department of Transportation discretionary funding programs.
Okay. So we have we got that handout in the back, Thomas?
One page.
Yeah, the one page.
Yes.
These are programs, and I don't have the page in front of me. Can someone give me at least the copy? Thank you, Thomas.
I didn't get the copy. Thank you. Oh, sure.
This gives you an idea of what's happening here regarding federal programs that are available at this time that are not attributable to NERC's programming timelines. A lot of these have spiraled out of the different bills that have, he's passing out some of it as well. So it's best to kind of follow along here. We want to make sure, at the very least, that we are informing our member communities as well as partner stakeholders of opportunities the federal government is providing us in this region federally at this time with new funding streams. And what you see here, we have, I believe, 3 of them that are identified. And these have, again, come out of either the American Rescue Act, or primarily the infrastructure, the bipartisan infrastructure, the IIJA, which is now the act that is guiding our federal funding processes in the United States at this time. As you well know, it takes a while after the bill goes through so much back and forth in Congress to come out, and then all the federal agencies that are involved have to develop rulemaking so they can administer the funding correctly. It's not an overnight process, so it took several months, but we do have these 3 programs that have come out of that. The first one involving the Reconnecting Communities Pilot Program, and as you can see, all these are national programs, and you can see you got funding, planning grants available in this fiscal year of $50 million, and capital construction grants of $145 million. The application deadline to keep in mind is October 13th. And as you'd imagine, with a federal program that is national in scope, it's going to be highly, highly, highly competitive. The RAISE grants that we have just received in this region, and Munster particularly, again, those are highly competitive, as I can easily vouch for, because it took us 4 times to get one for the Marquette Greenway. And there's far more money available in that program than in this Reconnecting Communities. But again, you can see how it deals with trying to make sure that the legacy, as it says here in the summary, redress the legacy of harm caused by transportation infrastructure barriers of opportunity. So we're talking about projects, speaking to what you're getting at, Kay, about working with communities in environmental justice areas, as well as where transportation has provided negative effects of people living in these particular areas. So as you can see, although there is quite a bit of money available, it is quite focused on these particular areas. So we'll see if we can work with communities here in this region and help shepherd some projects forward with these programs. On the back, we have Safe Streets for All programs. This is, again, dealing with a complete streets mindset, or what we're trying to promote here at NERC is a living streets mindset, trying to make sure that we are working with roadways that can safely accommodate all intended users of that particular area. And as you can see here for fiscal year 22, there's been $1 billion set aside, and about 40% of that will be for planning grants. And the funding range could be from anywhere from $200,000 to $50 million, so you get a nice program approved here. Although the application for that is rapidly approaching next month in September. And then the final one being the Rail Crossing Eliminating Grant Program. This would be of great interest in Northwest Indiana. But it talks about funding for highway rail and pathway rail grade crossing improvement, focusing on safety and mobility here. The availability nationally is about $500 million, and $18 million being set aside for planning projects. And we're looking at an application deadline of October 4th. So again, these are new projects, new programs that have developed out of the last transportation infrastructure bill, and providing us great opportunities here in our region to advance programs that will help with obviously connecting communities, helping people connect with one another safely, and providing safe streets for this region. Any particular, I mean, we have questions here, but go ahead, Kate. I'm just saying that questions could probably be answered better on this handout than I can, but go ahead, Kate.
Thank you. I got multiple questions. Can you give me an example of what a project would look like under Reconnecting Communities?
Well,
Do you have anybody that's applying for it?
Well, again, this is so hot off the stove, I really can't play to any kind of project, but Thomas has an idea.
I think nationally, the idea for this particular program came out of some freeway teardowns that have occurred around the country. So where some interstate freeways were built through the middle of a low-income or minority neighborhood decades ago, and they're no longer fulfilling the desires of the community. And I think the first one that happened was the Embarcadero Freeway in Oakland, California. They chose not to rebuild it after the big earthquake they had. And then since then, other cities in the country have started tearing down some of the freeways, and they've been able to reconnect the neighborhoods together by doing that. So I think that was the impetus for it. We are actually talking with both Gary and Maryville about the possibility of doing a project on Broadway. Broadway used to be the beating heart of the region in many ways. It was the retail center, it was the center of activity for many decades. And now that's shifted down to US 30 in Maryville and Hobart. And so there's some questions that we have about, could we put together a compelling application? Gary has since become more low income and more minority population. Maryville, which started out as a primarily middle class white community, has started to have their demographic shift as well. And then Crown Point remains a largely white community. So we think there may be a compelling story to tell with Broadway, how it relates with I-65 and maybe also State Route 55 as well, and the connections between those three facilities. So we're talking right now about that, and we have yet to connect with Crown Point. We're hoping to do that this week or next week, though, and then get all three communities together. So that's something we're thinking about on that front. Hopefully that answers your question. The program is definitely not limited to freeway teardowns, and I haven't heard anybody in the year I've been here contemplate that any of our freeways should be torn down. But it's really focused in the language of how do we address things that have resulted that were not originally assumed that were going to occur. There have been negative consequences from spending transportation money that we didn't think about when we built those facilities originally.
It's not only addressing hard infrastructure either, but creating new infrastructure to provide these opportunities where displacement and disinvestment has occurred as well.
Any of the federal bills with funding opportunities are stretch out over 10 years. Is that also the timeline for these three programs? These dollars will be over 10 grants each year for 10 years?
We're not sure, but this is a 5-year program. I think it's a 6-year infrastructure program. I mean, that's what was approved with the IIJA. So we're thinking we'll probably have a 5-year funding window at this time, but I can't say beyond that.
When IIJA was passed by Congress, they approved so much money for each of these programs. Those were the authorized funding levels. But every year, Congress has to appropriate funds through their annual budgeting process. So it's possible they may choose to zero them out at some point. Hopefully that won't be the case. Hopefully they'll continue funding it throughout the life of IIJA. But the federal government has in the past zero funded other programs that weren't in DOT. They've done that for like EDA and some other agencies in the past.
And then my last comment is, as communities are looking to take advantage of this plethora of federal dollars that are available, and you're submitting an application, please don't hesitate to reach out to Heather or myself for letters of support to be included. You know, we would be happy to help those projects that the communities endorse. We won't go against the communities' wishes, so just let me know that right now. So.
Well, NERC's in the same situation too. We want to be able to support our member cities, towns, and counties if they're putting together discretionary grant applications to the federal government. We'd be more than happy to sign letters of support. We might even be able to provide some of our staff time to help develop maps if that was necessary, or other types of analyses subject to our staffing constraints. The last thing I want to say is, while we put this brochure together, and I think it's on our website now, this is not a complete list of all the new federal programs. We just haven't had a time to digest all of the new federal programs. These were ones that we thought were particularly relevant to this region, and so that's why we focused on these three. But we do intend to develop a complete list that we will put up on our website as we have time to go through all those programs and figure out all the details and ins and outs, and we will keep it up to date over time as well. So.
But you also said there's not comfortable deadline programs.
Well, it's various deadlines. If you look on here, you got one, I think two of them in October, one of them in September. So.
All bureaucratic.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's the thing. They announce it, and then it's like, you know, hurry up and wait, then you wait, then it's hurry up. So that's kind of how this works. Any other questions? Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to resolution 2217, establishing congestion mitigation air quality traffic congestion performance measure targets.
Good morning, thank you, Mr. Chair. I draw your attention to resolution 22-17, which you will find on pages 3 to 5 of your agenda packets. This is about establishing congestion mitigation air quality traffic congestion performance measure targets. I know that is a mouthful, but basically, federal regs require that every 4 years that NERC, in conjunction with 3 other agencies, the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, the Illinois Department of Transportation, and the Indiana Department of Transportation, collectively agree on traffic congestion performance measure targets for the entire Chicago urbanized area, which is about 90+% in Illinois, but about a little less than 10% in Lake and Porter counties in Indiana. And the 2 traffic congestion performance measure targets that are required to be set are the percentage of non-single occupancy vehicle mode share commute to work in the region, as well as the peak hours of excessive delay per capita on the national highway system in the region. So throughout the spring and the summer, NERC staff has been coordinating with the staff of those other 3 agencies on agreeing to performance measure targets for the entire Chicago urbanized area. And what we're bringing before you today is the recommendations for those targets for both 2-year and 4-year increments. So on page 5 of your agenda, you'll see in the table the performance measure targets that that staff has agreed to for the entire area. And those are, by 2023, at least 32.4% of non-single occupancy vehicle travel to work, and by 2025, at least 32.6% non-single occupancy vehicle mode share to work. So that includes transit, active transportation, and it also includes working from home, which has been a huge trend in the last few years. So we're probably in no danger of missing those targets for the area. And that trend does continue its upward trajectory, which means that we are improving over time in more non-single occupancy vehicle modes to work over time. Now, on the peak hours of excessive delay per capita measure on the national highway system, that target actually shows actually getting worse. The target that we're proposing for a 2-year target by 2023 is 15.6 peak hours of excessive delay per capita, and by 2025, 15.9 peak hours of excessive delay per capita. But this is consistent with a region whose economy is improving and rebounding from the pandemic. We're just going to probably see, based on the trend lines, more traffic on our major highways. So those targets have all been set by looking at the trend lines of actual data in the past few years. And so the proposal before you is for this would be a technical amendment to our existing NWI 2050 plan as well as our existing fiscal years 2022 to 2026 transportation improvement program because our old targets for those measures are already in those plans. So this is a technical amendment to change those numbers in the plan. And the Surface Transportation Committee did give its approval for this body at our meeting last Tuesday on August 23rd. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, of course.
I'm so sorry.
No, don't be. Good question.
What is the difference between a non-single occupied vehicle and a high occupancy vehicle, HOV acronym?
Yeah, it sounds like it's a very technical term, but basically, single occupancy vehicle is one person in the vehicle, so just one
Right.
driver, no other people. High occupancy vehicle is a carpool of at least 2 or more people.
I thought you were saying
Yeah.
non-single.
So that's just that's basically a percentage of basically every other way to get to work besides being driving or in a car. So sorry, it can include carpooling, walking, biking, taking transit, telecommuting, working from home. So all of those ways. As you can imagine, the entire Chicago area, which is 90+% in Illinois, there has been a obviously an increasing trend in working from home recently. So that's going to get us toward that target pretty easily, even if transit ridership might be down substantially in the entire Chicago area.
As the person here without a whole lot of transit, as evidenced by my questions, you might want to define that somewhere because to me that just translated into saying what I do every day, drive by myself. If you're saying it's drive by myself, but also biking or walking or taking mass transit in that category.
Right. Well,
So you don't need to go any further. I'm good.
yeah, it's basically any other mode besides driving myself.
Okay. I didn't read it that way or hear it that way. Okay.
But it might be good to have an asterisk,
Yeah.
a little bit more explanation.
Right.
It's simple for those of us that are stupid.
Yeah, that, I mean that is technically the way that it is written in the federal regs, not the SOV, but I understand a lot of people don't understand that, so I appreciate that.
And just a reminder to avoid using the acronyms that they use, keep up on the SOA. Anybody else have any questions, comments? Do I have a motion to approve?
Second.
It's for favorable recommendation to the commission. Any other comments? If not, move to the voice vote. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Now we move on to resolution 2219, presentation of Rosy's new POE program, transit-oriented development. Funding eligibility criteria and some supporting report.
Good morning, everyone. I'll be looking, I think, here because it's I can see that much better. Today I'm presenting the new NERC POG funding program, and we've been working in the last year and a half in this program, working with communities, transit agencies. I have with me the team, Peter Campbell here. He did all the nice maps and graphics in this study. And also in the beginning, I had Gabrielle Bitumas with me before leaving NERC. She was working in the first part of the report. So I'm going to have a presentation here. I'm going to talk about the program overview in general, and then the eligibility of the program, and then the program details talking about the criteria and activities. And I passed a handout that is describing all the program and criteria and all the eligibility. So in this one, I'm showing here a map nationwide, talking about, like where are the TOD programs from the state level, regional level, or local level. So the nearest one to us here is in Chicago area, and that's by RTA, we have a TOD program. We don't have any program in Indiana, so that will be the first TOD program in the regional level in the state of Indiana. The next slide here is talking about the program overview and why we're doing that, and why we wanted to establish this type of investment. And basically, we wanted to bring versatility and livability around the transit station. We want to look at the creative neighborhood area, also have enhanced the transit infrastructure to reduce the vehicle miles. We also support economic development and businesses around the station, improve the overall character, the quality of life, which encourage people to walk in and get their services and amenities within a station area. And of course, we are supporting affordable housing and multimodal transportation within the TOD station. So when we started the process, which is over a year and a half, it came as a recommendation from the Northwest Indiana 2050 plan to establish TOD. And to do that, we started to look at, which exactly station that we picked. So we picked all the 13 stations along the South Shore and the upcoming West Lake Corridor. And also we have so many bus stations, but like for us to select, because we don't have enough funding to fund all the stations. So we worked with the land use committee. I have David here. We had interesting discussion about the stations, and we came up with a good number of stations. So when we started the process, so we identified all the boundaries, which within half a mile, and we collected data like the transit surface data, bus frequency, and also the number of ridership within the area. We looked at the existing condition around the station, and we tried to meet all the requirements that is coming from the 2050 plan. We also developed typologies for every proposed TOD station and see, where they are. Are they ready to start the implementation, or they need planning first? And we have recommendations in the report, which will be posted by tomorrow for people who would like to look at it and have any comments. And then finally, by the end of the project, we finalized the funding program, guidelines, eligibility, and how to support planning the projects. Here's one of the maps that's showing when we try to select like a bus station. So we looked at the transit frequency, and as you see here, the blue circle here is showing that they have more than one bus stop per hour, and that's like give us a high priority. You see along the Broadway, we have a significant bus stops along the Broadway. We also have in Valparaiso area along the Brown Street and Kendall. So in this one, this map helped us decide which station that we select, and we selected 5 stations. These 5 stations, we have 2 in Gary. Of course, we have the metro area within the South Shore station, but also we have one by ION and 35th Street, and also the second one by 11th Street. And then we have one in Maryville, which is the Century Plaza, and one in the East Chicago, the downtown area, and then the last one in the city of Valparaiso bus station. So these are the 5 stations that we selected, plus the 13 stations from the South Shore and the West Lake. So total of 15. As you see here on the left, we have Hammond, Gary Metro, and East Chicago represent 73% of the total ridership of the South Shore, which is a significant number along with these 3 communities. They also represent the highest train frequency of 36 trains per day, of course, both ways. One of the things also with the analysis, we looked at the balance of employment and housing in residential area. And here in the map, the green is the employment, and the blue is the residential area. And you can see with this map the balance. Some they have a good balance between the green and blue, and some other, like on the left side here, you see, for example, Maryville, Century Plaza. They have like almost 5% residential area within, so they don't have enough housing and residential area along that. So that gives us a good indication about what every area needs, and we identified that in the report about their needs and if they need planning, if they need the housing study, if they need the market study. And when we decided on the type of investment, we looked at, after we evaluated and have the typology for every station, we looked at what kind of investment. So we have a TOD progressive, and that represents a successful prototype land use within the region. So these communities or these specific stations, they already advanced, they already have plans. They may have some challenging of the average to high prices market, which is not supporting affordable housing. So the type of program or investment for this type of progressive area is to support affordable housing projects with the TOD, and also focus on improving amenities and have like more urban streets, living and infrastructure. The second type of investment here is the TOD emergent, and this one has all the basics of the TOD but cannot achieve TOD building type of density. So they might have amenities, they might have other things that support. They have like a good connectivity, good network, good grid system, but they don't have like a high density within their area or within the building. And in the type of investment for this one will enhance local market strength, increase activity level using density, and again also create an urban character with better connectivity to accommodate all modes of transportation. The third type of investment, and that's a TOD restricted, and I'm showing here on the left. This is like part of the analysis that we have. The one on the right, I mean, showing the grid system for the Dune Park area. As you see here, it's lacking streets because of the national park within the area, and really they are restricted. So we have no good opportunity like to have a lot of improvements within these areas because of the environmentally restricted to support any TOD characters. So for this type of plan, like we recommended to improve accessibility to the station, either the bike trails or walking from the nearby area, or a bus service to the train station, like Valparaiso is having that, and it could be also from other communities. So that's another one that we are offering here, and specifically they will start with the planning. So when we talk about the projects here, eligibility, what we did here for the funding, first the eligible area for all the train stations. So the TOD of NICTI train stations include all the parts of the RDA, Transit Development District, TDD area, and I will show you that the TDD area is not really covering most of the half a mile boundary, which is good. I think this program will complement the TDD district because it covers other areas that is not covered by the TDD. So any block that intersects with the half a mile boundary will be included and will be eligible. For the bus area, the same. It's all the area within half a mile and including all the parcels within a block that intersect with the half a mile. The map here showing the Monster Ridge, and that's showing, so we have the half a circle first, and Peter here was able to come up with the boundary that intersect with all the circle, and that's all the blocks or all the parcels that will be eligible within the study area for funding. The one on the right here is the TDD area, and as you see, I don't know if I can do that. So Ridge Road here, so we have the TDD mostly along Ridge Road and Mary Street, but it doesn't cover all the area. So as you see here in the middle, the station and Ridge Road. So we're covering way more north and also other residential area that will be eligible. And that's, so the TDD, as I looked at, most of them are covering the commercial or industrial area. They are not covering a residential area. Not in all the cases, but this is the case of Munster. So in this case, you know, like our funding will cover even more area and improve connectivity between the residential area and the station. So for the funding grants, so we have like two types of funding. So we have the TOD planning, and that's provide funding for all the bus stations area. NICTI and the RDA received like $1.5 million, and they are working now on developing a TOD planning for the 13 stations along the South Shore and also the upcoming West Lake Corridor. So we are not gonna like provide the planning fund for them for a TOD plan. We could fund other type of plans. So it's basically for all the bus stations. So it could be like a conductor corridor plan, district or station area TOD plans, revitalization, redevelopment plan, or market study, or the other thing also access plan. So the other eligible plans, which could be applicable for all the 18 stations, the well-funding plans, a living streets plan, and also the road and sidewalk connectivity plans, road diet, and the right sizing plan. So these will be all eligible for the 18 stations to apply for. The second one here, which is also under planning, the TOD supported policy, and this one for all the participating communities that they really wanted to like adopt the type of policies that support TOD, and also emphasizing on equitable and affordable housing. So the eligible projects under that would be affordable housing within a TOD area, equitable development outcomes, if they wanted to have some ordinance or languages that support equitable development, TOD design guidelines, and also supporting zoning and overlay ordinance. So these are the type of policy that could be funded under planning. The next one is basically for implementation, and that's for the community that they are ready to go. And I know that like maybe 3 communities now are ready and they are advanced, and they can apply for implementation funding or pre-development plans. And all the eligible items, I don't know if I can read all of that, but like you have it here, it's a variety of things that we are covering here under the funding implementation grants. And I think finally we put a competitive funding criteria, and in this one, like every project will be distinguished itself from other qualified projects. However, the main area that we're looking for is to improve air quality and reduce greenhouse gas emissions, advance environmental justice, and of course promote affordable housing. And that's an emphasis coming from the IIJA, as we talked about the different funding. Now they are looking more for affordable housing and equitable and environmental justice, and that's we wanted also to support that within our funding. So of course, not all the criteria could be applied for the funding, planning versus implementation versus policy. Of course, the criteria will be different. You have a handout here that's showing all of the competitive funding criteria. I think that's starting from page 3 in the handout. But the basic criteria, we're looking to strengthen the economic base and increase transit ridership. Also, we wanted to to put an emphasis on placemaking and local identity for each community and each station area, remove barriers to equity and affordable housing, and also attract investment and create jobs. So that's the main criteria, and in each criteria we have a specific things that we're looking for, and I'm not gonna read all of that, like you can, if you want me to go over that, or if you want to read it by yourself, and if you have any questions, I welcome to answer. But basically, it's covering, like most of the TOD supportive planning and policy and elements. And again, like when you go over these criteria, is not applicable for every project. So it will be different from a bus station versus a South Shore station or a West Lake corridor. It's different from like an urban downtown versus suburban. But we wanted to make sure, and the staff, we are the one going to go over that and see the applicable criteria for your application, which is coming next month. The NOFA is coming, and we really encourage everyone. And if you want to talk to me about any projects that is related to planning or implementation, you're welcome to call me and ask me, and we can sit together and see what's the applicable application. We also we had also suggestion from planner to add planning to the NOFA, not just the TOD planning, and I'm going to discuss that with Charles and see what we can do. So that's very much, and we have here like a resolution 2219. We had an approved by the Land Use Committee last week on Wednesday, and they had a recommendation to the TPC to recommend it to the Commission. And if you have any questions, David.
I just wanted to give credit where it's due. Even I don't think they have a program for FTA and FHA upgrade funding like we do up here. Indianapolis does have a pretty robust TOD planning infrastructure. They actually have a steering committee, and in the city and Indigo and the NGL are also very much involved in that. That might be something you might, if you want to take TOD seriously, both on commuter rail and rapid bus, we probably should look at something like that, maybe starting with the transit involved PTC, Chicago, and Malco, and those communities that have TBD areas in them. Munster, Portage, Michigan City, am I missing anybody? And RDA, obviously RDA. And some sustainability. That's just off the top of my head right now, so not finalizing anything, but just if you want to go in that direction of really legitimizing the TOD effort here, and I applaud the last couple of years of our communication and work and land use committee's work, that might be a way we might want to go around here. And not to duplicate what the RDA with their TBD thing, but since this is a more multimodal effort here in Mercy, that's just a thought.
Tying in what David said, the transformational road going through Little Creek extension. Perhaps that might be a time to consider some opportunities for transportation as that develops, rather than after the fact.
We're talking at land use about making Willow Creek starting it off as a complete street as opposed to an extension. When it's done, trying to retrofit it to be more pedestrian and transit friendly. If you do it from the start, including even policy, potentially, that might make it easier to make it a much more holistic, corridor once it's
You're fortunate to have the engineer here in case he wants to make a comment.
Yes, we will consider the program.
Okay, thank you, sir.
We
Dean?
So, sounds like that this is gonna be part of the overall NOFA process, right? So
Mhm.
funding is gonna come from the notice of fund availability later this fall.
Under which program?
It has like a standalone TOD planning and it has a TOD implementation.
No, but where's the origin of the money?
Oh, it's coming from SDBG, from the federal money.
Infrastructure bill?
Our NOFA.
Our regular.
Our regular bill.
And, yeah, the infrastructure bill.
Yeah, okay.
And so, you know, we've had, this is more of a higher level thing, we've sort of had buckets set aside in each of the categories, right? Classified where these funds are coming from. So this is a new initiative that I can see from NERC that, so how much money are we talking about setting aside from the regular amount of funds that were available through the NOFA process? Is there?
It's like we have like some increase in the funding. I know that next year is really tight. So it will be available specifically for implementation from 25-26 to 28. But planning, it could be happening from 2024. So that's for group 1. Group 2, they have like much better opportunities to start right away than group 2. So, and we're looking to have, like, I don't know if I can announce that now, but we're looking at about 400,000 a year for planning and $1,600,000 for implementation.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Good question. We need to know where all these monies are. How it's going to split up. But it's a good program.
Good.
And coming to that in the previous discussion, this will require action for 2219.
Motion to recommend resolution 2219.
Second. So, do we have any questions, Dave?
Does anybody have copies of the resolution I can quickly scan, because I obviously did not read this. Yeah, but I didn't.
Yeah, it's within the package.
Page 6 and 7.
I didn't print the packet.
You say which way.
I say public, that way.
Well, okay, okay. Are there any other questions, comments?
That some of the people that, we do other things that, particularly help by design, legacy foundation, they may have some experience in either funding or implementing, some programs adjacent to this in other parts of the state. I know there's agencies that are tax organisms behind it. Actually, tax organism is an eligible expense. After we got our conversation at land use. There are other organizations outside of Indianapolis that have done tax organisms and maybe doing planning that could integrate or improve areas near some of the transportation of the project. So, you know, it's not just Indy that I have experience.
Action this morning would be to adopt the TOD funding program as the official guidance for projects, directing program efforts. So it's all kind of leads to the direction that I think everybody supports, and a huge rest support.
The recommendation that David made earlier concerning the stakeholder group, is that reflected anywhere in the TOD program language?
Not that I know of, so yeah.
No, I literally just came up with that.
But I think it's a valid recommendation, especially because there's so many pots of money coming out, and I don't know how this stacks up against RDA and what HIPPY's got going on, and, you know, I mean, I see the value of it, absolutely, but I like the idea of expanding beyond the transportation committees of NERC traditional people.
We want to add that to the resolution or?
I don't know about the eligibility of the programs and the criteria, just for people for the NOFA when they apply. But this is that it's a continuous effort of the TOD. So we have it identified in our unified planning program. So, and that's an effort that like it could be led by NERC. So we could do that work because we have the land use committee already identified and have been discussed so many things related to TOD. And I'm already working with the RDA and the TDD, and I'm involved in all of the meetings, and they are aware of the TOD program. I presented in the last TDD meeting, and I think it's you know, like an addition to the TDD, because as I mentioned, the TDD area that they will collect like income tax, for that it's only for a specific area around the station. Is not covering all the area within the half a mile. So I think this is like this program complementing the TDD effort and the RDA effort. However, I think like it will be maybe a good opportunity for local communities also to work with the RDA if they wanted to have like a local match or something like that, since they already supporting all the TOD efforts here within the region.
I do understand that the land use committee's done a great job of forming this, but for all intents and purposes, GPTC is the only transit agency that's been involved at the land use committee. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to suggest, you know, well, NIPSI's been dealing with the TDD at the RDA level, but Buffalo Transit and East Chicago Transit in particular, I think because their stations, both bus and rail in their communities, I think Frank should have the opportunity to do something like that. And sometimes they don't always get the land use committee something that's relevant to them. But a transit-oriented development body is a lot more. I mean, I've had conversations with Frank Gonzalez about transit, about this plan, and he's excited.
He's familiar, and I sent it to them, and they already sent their some review and recommendations to me about the area. So I'm working with the planner, I'm working with the Frank, and I think they are familiar with that. But like I could come and present it to the transit roundtable, transit operator roundtable. So I could also come and present it. So they get. But I will present it in more details than that, than the funding, so they will know what's happening within their station area.
So you just mentioned it, I think that would be just for the next meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
As it stands, we have a motion to set on the floor for the resolution. Be mindful of the suggestions we have. I think we can carry those forward too. Don't need to be by resolution, in my opinion. So all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Move forward, and hopefully we can get staff, transit operators, all entities that have an interest in this together. Make it even better than what it is. Now we'll move on to the safety update for the second quarter, 2022 crashes. And we have it.
Great. So we have our second quarter update here. Several of you saw this at the STC, so here's your review, I suppose. We'll go through these numbers. This is something that NERC has started to do in the past couple of quarters, just so we can have that update. I'm sure it'll be a lot more interesting to see as we look at these quarter trends over a period of time. And then, you know, as always, just a reminder that we're a good source for this data. If you need any crash data or looking for anything specific, let me know. I can help you out with that. So overall collisions for the region, we had 6,311 total. 1,042 of those were injuries and 26 total fatalities, and this is for April 1st to June 30th. Moving on to Lake County, we'll just go county by county here and kind of look at the differences between the different results of these collisions here. Total collisions in Lake County, we had 4,344, which dropped from the last 2 quarters. So that's a good trend to see those going down. Same with property damage only, where we had 3,620 in this last quarter. We had a jump in injuries going from 563 to 707, and then fatalities that happened resulting from collisions in Lake County jumped from 13 to 17. Injuries that happened from these collisions, or injuries directly related to the collisions, increased to 707 from the 563, and then our total injuries also went up from 730 to 930. As far as incapacitating injuries from a collision, we went from 144 to 162. Incapacitating injuries total after the result of the collision and beyond went from 185 to 186. And then possible injuries went from 79 to 96. Possible injuries reported went from 103 to 128. The fatalities went from 13 to 17, and then the total fatalities reported in the end went from 15 to 19. Moving on to LaPorte County, our total collisions dropped from 821 to 809. Our property damage only collisions dropped from 682 to 666. Our injuries went from 135 up to 139, and fatality from collisions stayed the same at 4 in these quarters. The injury and collisions went from 135 to 139, and our total injuries went up from 177 to 192. Incapacitating injuries from collision went from 22 to 32, and our total incapacitating injuries went from 27 to 39. Possible injuries went from 21 to 19, and the possible injuries total reported went from 26 to 22. And then finally, as I said, the fatalities, just the total fatalities and the fatality were the same. There were no extra fatalities reported as a result of the collision, so 4 and 4. Finally, with Porter County here, we had 1,164 collisions last quarter, and that went to 1,158. Our property damage only dropped from 995 to 957. Our injuries from the collisions went from 164 to 196, and fatalities we had 5 both last quarter and this past quarter that we're reviewing here. Our injury from collisions went from 164 to 196, and our total injuries went from 218 to 244. Incapacitating injuries from collision went from 27 to 49. Incapacitating injuries total went from 30 to 54. Possible injuries went down from 23 to 21, and then the total possible injuries reported also went down from 30 to 25. And then in Porter County, we also had the same number of fatalities, and total fatalities reported at 5. Again, these are on the website, so these are just the summary of that same information by county for reference. So I don't need to read through these, but I will put this on the website today. And now some information just on how these collisions are occurring with the infrastructure we have here in Northwest Indiana. 32.4% of the crashes occurred within 50 feet of an intersection. 14.5% of crashes were on a level of service segment rated F. 18.6% of these crashes were on segments rated E, and 16.5% of these crashes were on segments rated D. So that gives us a total of 49.6%, so just under that 50% mark for all of these collisions occurring on what we rate as poor performing segments. And then finally, 40.9% of these crashes were located in our environmental justice areas. Yeah.
So do you have like a specific location that has like a high crashes? Have you looked into that? So we can see, which intersection that have like a high crashes or?
Yeah, so I haven't done that with these, but that'll definitely be something that everybody will see because that's a map in the NOAA applications.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be updated with the most recent last 5-year crash data. But that's definitely something I could include in these presentations going forward as well, at the quarterly. that's Scott's model that he types in the numbers, and that's what it's has to do with congestion. So
It's congestion, not the road surface quality.
No, it's related to travel time.
Gotcha.
Level of service.
You tell I play dodgeball with Pacos every day, so I'm curious.
yeah, so that information you'll find that out if you dig deeper into the crash reports. So
And these numbers are becoming more significant for all your applications, grant dollars, federal dollars. And the earlier discussion about the federal discretionary grant programs, that just know that the staff's available with some safety data.
yeah,
that will
all
help
the
those
HCF buckets.
applications that you choose. So
Thank you.
we'll move on to programming. FTA fiscal year 2021 local split. Approval of 2021 FTA funds split between CPTC, NERC, and DIC. The action request for approval.
Thank you. We are asking, I guess, just for a show of hands, we didn't bring a formal resolution to this committee. Historically, NERC has allocated the funds that we receive from FTA by getting together with GPTC and with NICD and kind of hashing things out between our three agencies. And then this committee would get involved when whichever agency needs the program funds in the TIP. But this division of funds occurs earlier, and I guess as I'm a new, or relatively new at this point, employee, I had some conversations with our executive director, Ty Warner, and I asked him why we don't bring this before TPC so that they can see how the funds are initially divided. Just as we divide them, because these FTA funds come to the bi-state Chicago urbanized area, we have a negotiation process we go through with RTA, the Regional Transit Alliance, on the Illinois side of the state line. And so in our conversations between our three agencies on this side of the state line, we have talked about how our needs are shifting financially between our three organizations, and in our case, our subrecipients, whose transit operations we oversee. And so we discussed coming up with 4 criteria that we would use to divide the funds. And every year when we receive a new allocation of FTA funds, particularly 5307, we would look at these 4 criteria when we meet. So the first criteria that we decided to look at is how did the funds come to the region, both the bi-state region and then our portion of the bi-state region. FTA has formulas that they use that are based off of a variety of criteria like ridership, things like that. And so one of the things that we thought would be a good tool to look at is how we get the funds originally might be a good way to look at how we allocate them between the 3 agencies. But we also wanted to look at other data we have available. Every year, transit agencies are required to submit their operating expenses to FTA, so we know what those are on an ongoing basis. There is a national transit database that we can access, that we can see what all the transit agencies are spending for their operating expenses. We thought that we would look at a rolling 5-year average, because sometimes those operating expenses spike in a given year for a variety of reasons. However, we did decide to exclude the COVID years because those were atypical and caused everybody's to go up exorbitantly for those couple of years. Finally, we decided to look at, the third criteria that we decided to look at is what the current needs are for each of the transit operators. So we would look at what is currently programmed in the TIP for the current year and for upcoming years, and we would look at other upcoming expenses that may be beyond the length of the TIP as well, particularly capital expenses. For example, if we're buying buses, an agency might buy them every 6 years or every 10 years on average, because it has to do with the number of miles on the bus, not so much doing it every so many years. And then the final factor we decided to look at was whatever old federal funds were available that hadn't been used yet, we need to be spending all of our old funds before we start assigning new funds. So we want to look at why are those funds not being spent? Are those funds that are under contract with FTA for a specific use, and is that specific use moving forward, or are they just funds that have been allocated to one of the 3 direct recipients and they haven't been utilized yet for any particular purpose? We would like to see those used before giving the agency additional money. So those were the things that we were discussing most recently, and I think we came to a pretty good agreement. You can see the dollar amounts reflected for the federal fiscal year 2022 funds. This is a little bit of an unusual year in that we had not previously allocated fiscal year 2021 funds. So this year we actually had 2 years worth of funds to allocate. So I think it's a little bit interesting of a year. We did not bring the 21 fiscal year funds before this group, but we just wanted to have a conversation. I think we have consensus between our 3 agencies, NICD, GTPC, and NERC is how we would divide it. But again, before these funds get programmed into the TIP, we thought it would be a good idea to bring it before you guys. Make sure you understand how we go through it.
Just a reminder, the letter was sent out, Ron, if you didn't get it, show the allocation for recipients. The GTPC was $2,749,942. Northern Indiana Commuter Transportation District, $9,950,000. Northwestern Indiana Regional Planning Commission, $3,178,185. So that's the full appropriation.
So if there's any questions, I mean, this is a new item that we haven't brought before this group before, but David?
A little bit of clarification. Actually, what Thomas mentioned earlier about the FY 2021 split, and it's not going from the beginning, actually had a lot of impact on what's here, which is why it's so atypical. So just putting that into context. Secondly, in the future, well, in the past, before this came before the CPC, before it was approved and signed by the executive director, the other 2 designated recipients can get a copy of it. We just, because we haven't seen this before today, even though we know what we're going to be in it. In the future, before it goes on the CPC, we just would request courtesy of a draft being sent to the designated recipients a week or so ahead of the CPC. This is going to be our annual part of the annual.
The new norm, yeah.
And I think it's a good change of policy. This is the first NXC.
Right. We didn't get it included in the packet. I was on vacation last week, and so I'll take full responsibility for not getting it.
That's fine. It's normal. This is the way we're going to do business next time. But this is fine for me.
It's also, I think, good for this body to know the relative funding levels that each agency is getting before you're looking at individual projects. And you're getting the big picture view of these numbers as well. But I do want to stress that our 3 organizations reached this allocation. We all agree that this should be the split. David's correct in that how we arrived at these amounts was a little bit different for the FY22 funds than it has been in the past. NICD, I think, specifically could probably spend all the federal funds we receive every year. They have a lot of very large projects that are going on with the double tracking and the construction of the new Westlake line. So they could take everything. And I think that historically, if we look at the federal funds and the formulas that generate them for our region, historically, NICD has received a lower allocation than what their ridership and their mileage contributes to the region. And so that's why we added that one factor is to consider how much they're generating and how much both of us are generating, and trying to kind of rebalance things a little bit. And I think we also want to make sure that everybody's getting enough to continue their operations and to replenish their capital stock and things like that. And so NERC when looking at our needs, we did not take any of the FY21 funds. We had enough ARPA funds left over and enough CARES Act funds left over that we were still using, that we were able to meet our needs using those older funds. So for the upcoming year, we're going to need this amount, the 3.1 million, just to continue going for next year. And Area Public Transit, GPTC, and I think I got the acronym messed up last time. Talking too fast. They're meeting their current needs with the 21 funds, and then this allocation was for some extra things that they have on their, I don't want to say wish list, but they have a list of needs that they need to undertake, and this will help them move forward with those as well. So each of our three organizations had kind of a different path to getting to this allocation, but at the end of the day, we were able to do it. I'm happy to share that with you guys today.
I just want to clarify that this $9.9 million, not any of this is going to projects, this is capital money for next year.
I should have said that.
Yeah, this is strictly, honestly, this could be spent exclusively on salaries and not even the train crews. Their salaries aren't eligible. This is maintenance away. Use this for maintenance away funding. This is not capital.
We're not doing the double track with this. We're not building the Westlake line.
And I will say, this apportionment is coming far later in the year than historically it typically does. There is a big scramble and rush with FTA funds. Our grants in the past had to be in by June 30th. FTA keeps nudging that date up. This year they wanted them by June 15th. Typically it's like sometime in March you get your apportionment and it needs to go through Chicago and then come here, and so it's like a Chinese fire drill. Everyone scrambles all at once. We're doing a million different calculations, the federal calculation, the regional calculation from Chicago, and then we bring it here. So it's a lot of work has to happen very quickly. There's not, we always say like, let's do this ahead of time. There's not a ton of work we can actually do ahead of time. We try, trust me, we try, but there's always a curveball. So typically, this needs to come before this committee and your commission before June 30th. Yeah.
Here we are, and do we need a favorable recommendation to full commission? Normally we don't.
I think we're just asking for this group to give the nod to this allocation. We're not looking for a formal resolution to take to the executive commission at this point. This may be a transitory step in between doing that next year. We need to think through it a little bit more.
Are we looking for approval?
Yes.
For a motion.
I'd like a motion.
Okay. I'll move motion for approval.
I'll second.
First and a second. Roll call, Mr. Liddell. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Here we are, various topical committee reports. We'll start with Mitch.
Yes, sure. We had our meeting at Federal Panel last week, a quarterly meeting in October. Several things were brought up. We had Dustin Anderson, our manager of Munster, who took part in the meeting and talked about the recent award for Ridge Road for the RAISE grant. They received $17 million from the feds to retrofit Ridge Road as a complete streets corridor from the state line to Columbia Avenue in light of the Big T station at Ridge Road, helping to connect people to it. Main element being a new side path being created right there on Ridge Road, that obviously help out with connectivity for that community and meld with your TOD as well directly. And there's some other things that are brewing as well. We have a bike map app that we've been trying to launch forever. Now we're pretty much held hostage to both Google and Apple to get it on their app platforms before we can release it regionally. So as soon as we get the word from both of those entities, we will have our map app out for the region. And I'm also pleased to announce that we will be putting out a new bike map, an actual paper map update this year, later this year. We have to Mr. Files from Active Transportation Alliance. Peter is now in possession of those golden nuggets. And so going forward, we'll be a lot more proactive about thinking how the updates can happen. And I believe that's all I have.
Do you have any questions from Mitch? Look forward to this maps.
The land use committee met last Wednesday, and we had the same or similar presentation introducing the program, and also so we got the recommendation to the TPC, and also we had a good discussion about the upcoming NOFA and the land use committee responsibility to review the applications of all the TOD planning and implementation, as well as the quality of place applications. We also can give recommendations for highway expansion, but we are not the one making the final words for that. Is the STC, Surface Transportation Committee, is the one making the final decision with that. But the land use committee has to look at any new roads expansion and how that impacts the land use. So we discussed all of the, and also the new program that is coming, which is Protect, and that's basically about resiliency of infrastructure. So we went through that, and it will be in the upcoming NOFA. Also, we have the CRP, or the Carbon Reduction Program. I also introduced that at the Land Use Committee. So people to be aware of that when the NOFA comes. I think we are going to have like a quick workshop for people, or questions and answers to understand more about the programs. And as Mitch mentioned, that like we will have all of these programs on our website, the new programs, so people can understand more what's eligible under these items. Same, we had Tom Vanderwall, the planning director from Moundstar. He talked about the Ridge Road and the $17 million that they got from the RAISE grant, and we have any other discussions for the Willow Creek and other reports from community.
Any questions for Todd?
The Surface Transportation Committee meeting met last Tuesday, August 23rd, and we discussed Resolution 22-17 on those traffic congestion performance measure targets. We saw the safety presentation that Peter gave, and I also gave an additional presentation on the travel time reliability and congestion in our region last quarter. We also discussed our strategy about the railroad crossing elimination program, that particular discretionary program that we've been talking about, and what our strategy is going to be in assessing the community's needs and where they're at with that. And our next committee meeting will be on Tuesday, November 22nd.
Questions for Ms. Woodward? Do we have any other committee reports? Do we have anybody here from Directly Indiana? No.
You might have to, you're going to remind them that they have a spot.
She told me she had a replacement. She was going to direct hers.
Just, yeah.
And do we have anybody else here? Anybody from the planning partners? If not, we'll just announce that Finance and Personnel Committee meets September 15th at 8 a.m. And then the NERC Executive Board meeting will follow at 9 a.m. on September 15th. And they'll consider